Uh, Good evening to everyone, and greetings to one and all. Respected Principal Sir, Professor S.T. Genesius, our college authority, distinguished guest, Dr. Jimli Bhattacharjee, uh, and other faculties of St. John College, and from outside also, all the participants and all my beloved students. So it is really a glorious moment for us, especially for the Department of Sociology and Department of Botany. And I wish all of you on behalf of both the department. So it is a really great honor for me to welcome all of you in today's webinar on behalf of entire college. I would like to welcome and express my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Genesius, Principal of St. John College, and our college authority for giving us permission to organize this webinar. I convey my heartfelt gratitude to our speaker, Dr. Jimli Bhattacharjee, for accepting our invitation within a very short period of time and ready to deliver lecture on environment and society in Northeast India. I welcome all my colleagues who support us throughout the webinar. I welcome all the participants in different categories who are present here to share ideas and view on the topic of discussion. Before I conclude my speech, I would like to briefly introduce our guest, Dr. Jimli Bhattacharjee, Associate Professor from the Department of Sociology, Assam University, Silchar. So, Ma'am has joined Assam University, Silchar in October 2004, sorry, as assistant professor, and now she is serving as an associate professor in the Department of Sociology. And she did her PhD and MPhil from JNU, New Delhi. She worked in different organizations, especially in the as a research assistant in Indian Institute of Foreign Trade and Foreign Trade in New Delhi. Again in ActionAid New India in New Delhi as a researcher. She started her career in teacher from Maharaja Bir Bikram College, Agartala, for a short period of time. And apart from this, she published research articles in many national and international journals. And she has been working in the field of sociology of environment, mainly on environmental movement in Northeast India. So this is all about ma'am, and we are very much happy that ma'am has accepted our invitation and ready to give and enlighten us on this auspicious webinar. And I also hope that this webinar will be very much fruitful and which will enlighten us, which will create awareness in the various forms. And once again, I welcome each and everyone who are present in this webinar. Once again, I welcome all of you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Now I'd like to give this time to the principal of St. John College, Professor S.T. Genesius, for the keynote address.
The topic is really wonderful, environment and society in Northeast India. And first of all, I have to congratulate the sociology department as well as the botany department for presenting this topic to the students. And also I welcome Dr. Jimli from Assam University for this for our college and meet the students. And in honor of both the departments, sociology and botany, I thank her also for accepting our invitation and giving the lecture to our students. Now, coming to the topic, environment and society in Northeast India is the topic itself is really exciting to me in two counts, because I am fond of talking about environment and society. I am also fond of talking about Northeast India because our college is also situated in Northeast India. However, my approach towards looking at this issue will be entirely different, because I am not a sociologist by myself as a profession. I am a psychologist. However, as a psychologist also, we look at environment, how it affects the people and society, I do study and I do speculate on that. I remember I would like to compare two societies. One is Afar region in Ethiopia. Afar region in Ethiopia, that is considered one of the hottest places in the world, actually. The people who live there are very tough in their nature, very tough, because the environment is such. You just imagine hottest place, even Dimapur hot, we are not able to tolerate the heat here in Dimapur. But imagine a place declared as the hottest place in the world, Afar region, the whole region is the personality of the people, the society is completely reflected by the environment in which they are living now. The second place I would like to compare is the Kaveri Delta in South India. Kaveri Delta, I lived there for 6 months in Kaveri Delta. Around the year, there is water. Around the year, there is water, and in every village, we can see a stream, Kaveri Delta area, before the river Kaveri reaches the sea. So now, they cultivate 3 times in a year, and I have seen in the evening with my own eyes and my own ears a funny thing. Funny means a very peculiar thing. People sit in the corridors of their houses and play musical instruments. I have never ever seen in my life anywhere else. That means people are really so relaxed, and fine arts developed in those areas. Now, the environment of the people reflects in their social living. Same with why do we go to Africa, Afar region? Take the case of Rajasthan. People are really tough because the Thar desert is there, and climatic conditions are not very conducive for normal living. So the environment actually reflects in the life of the people. Now, I would like to say one more point regarding this environment and society, especially in Northeast India. The environment is completely degraded these days due to many aspects. Maybe greedy of human beings, we say generally, but in Northeast, especially in Nagaland, because of the socio-political conditions, I would say that depletion of environment is completely there. Now, how it will affect the thinking of the people, living of the people, that is the sociologist has to work out. I would say, as a psychologist, I would say that, well, it affects the human being as well. There's no doubt in that. 100% sure, the environment depletion, environment degradation in Northeast India, especially in Nagaland, is reflected, will reflect in the life of the people in the next generation. There's no doubt in that. But however, I really love this place because of the greenery. But however, Nagaland, especially in Dimapur, is the most dusty area I have ever seen in my life because of the poor road conditions. Poor road condition automatically creates dust. The smoke here, the vehicle smoke. For example, you drive a car in the 5th gear, emits less smoke. Whereas when the road is not good, you drive your car in the 2nd gear or 3rd gear, automatically you are emitting more pollution in the air. The dust that is coming from the roads, the pollution that is coming from the road, that makes not very attractive. Dimapur is not very attractive environmentally. I don't know how it is reflecting in the life of the people in the course of time is a big issue. Whereas I love from Bokajan to northward up to Brahmaputra River. Oh, wonderful place. Really, I love to drive vehicle there. So peaceful. The road between Makir Hills one side, Naga Hills the other side, and the plain land with the Dhansuri River is really a wonderful place for me to relax. Whereas in Dimapur, it's very hard for me to relax because of the environmental pollution. Now, I would say that, okay, the environment reflects in the life of the people, and Northeast is I would say in this way, it is in a transformal condition, or it's transforming. Now, we have to really work out. And if you want to understand the society, we have to really study the environment in which people are living. Now, if the environment is changing, that means the society is also changing. Now, probably that is the duty of the sociologist and also the botanist to take care of the environment, sociologists to study the society, maybe psychologists, we look at a little more individually. That's what I was conveying just now. So the topic as such will give some insights to the students, both botany and sociology. I would wish that way. And also madam is there from Assam University. I think she will enlighten in this area, I suppose, because I do not know what exactly sociologists will look at environment and society. I have no idea. But however, probably I can understand generally saying that, okay, this is the way we look at the society and the environment, and let this small talk webinar arranged by the sociology department and botany department will enlighten. I wish all the best to all the students and also to the department. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to give this time to our speaker, Dr. Jimli Bhattacharjee, Associate Professor, Department of Sociology, Assam University, to please take her time. And this will be followed by question and answer session. So if the students or the staffs have any question, you may please type it down in the comment section. Ma'am, you can take your time now.
Thank you, Nijim. And I thank Dr. Sita also to give me this platform to speak on environment and society. I'm highly grateful to the principal of St. George College, Dr. S.T. Genicius, to invite me for this particular lecture on environment and society in Northeast India. Actually, when Dr. Sita asked me to deliver a lecture on society, mainly sociological, on sociological issues, then I asked that, I would like to speak on environment and society in Northeast India, because I have got a chance to speak to people, the students of the college. As I asked her that the target audience will be mainly the college students and some faculty members. So I deliberately took this topic to deliver it on environment and society in Northeast India, as this is my area of interest. What I've drawn from my background there in science in my undergraduate level, which also gave me impetus to understand and to find the role of sociology, or the people, I'll say rather people, in the protection of environment. So before I go and speak on environment and society in Northeast India, I would like to speak a bit on what is society and what is environment, and why we talk about both of this, and why these two should go always together. Some of my my colleagues may not agree or may not have much knowledge on sociology, may say that why may not agree with me when I say, when I reiterate the very important statement by August Scott, the founder of sociology as a discipline, when he put sociology in the highest position out of all sciences. In the hierarchy of sciences, he put sociology at its highest rank. So I sometimes, when I deal with many issues related to environment, related to even science policies, I feel that sociology has to do a lot. Otherwise, all those knowledge, scientific knowledge, are of no use. So what we need to do is that we need to understand the very, very important discoveries, inventions, and its use in society. How do we really use those inventions? Sometimes my idea also comes when I talk about, or when I think about that, what society is. And in this context, again, I remember when Levi-Strauss is an anthropologist who said that, who was telling that when a human being developed, incest taboo, it is the first stage when human being dominated nature. When human being dominated nature means we have moved towards culture. Now, movement from nature to culture. Human being as a natural being like other animal being becomes social being, becomes a rational being. So, and that capacity of human being puts it, Homo sapiens, in its highest position, the most superior animal of animal world. So now putting that human being as animal as well as a social being, how does it go ahead? So my point here is that how do we understand sociology, the role of human being as a social being, human being as a rational being, and human being also having some instincts like other animals. So it is culture. It is culture which is differentiating human being or taking human being ahead of other animals. Giving this background, I want to understand now what is society and what is environment. So society, as I said, that human being, when it developed culture, it gradually started developing. It's gradually started developed a device to live together. In fact, we can say this is an instinct again. The instinct made human being to live as a social being. So it created its society or formed its society. The social institutions emerged as a weapon or as an organ to facilitate human being to deal with nature and to have a better life. So how to address the natural issues, natural threats that is very often posed to animal being, and in the process animal being has come to a stage up to the stage of evolution up to human being, Homo sapiens. So starting from amoeba to human being, we find that animals always try to adjust with nature, and then final stage when animal could develop a weapon, that is culture, to adjust with nature, the very way of adaptation changed. And the adaptation started with developing institutions and a larger society, a small society to a larger society. We know human being has traveled through different stages of savagery to barbarism. Savagery, hunting and food gathering stage, to barbarism, and then to a settled life of settled cultivation, when human beings started having a civilized life. Now question is that, point is what I want to say is that the relation between human being and nature. So that relation, that interaction between human being and nature continued and continues and will be continued. Now to see the link between human being or social being and environment in broader term, environment, how human being has adjusted and what is the status now is human being has or as a social being has. So Northeast India is a very important context, I'll say, to understand the very interplay between human being or social being and environment, or we'll say society and environment. What is society? We understand as a student of sociology, we understand society is simply, it's very difficult to define also, but anyways, in simple term, we can say a web of social relationship as is understood or accepted by most of the sociologists. A web of social relationship. One social relationship is connected to another social relationship, and that way entire network is there, and that's what we call society. So all individuals are connected to each other, and there we find the role of institution that they are connected in a particular way, in an order, just not like that. They are arranged in a very systematic way, in ordered way to perform some actions. So we know every day human being or as a social being behaves in the society, and our principal sir already has said that he is having a psychology background, can understand better that behavior is very important. Human behavior, individual behavior is very important, and then how one individual behaves with another individual. So psychology has its own orientation to understand, and sociology has its own. But there is something called social psychology. We understand and we agree that, you know, it is society which has a very, very important impact on human behavior. So how do we behave with each other? How do we behave with the society? I mean, behave with the environment, that is to be seen. So that behavior, if we look at the very, you know, maybe 50 years back or 100 years back, the behavior of human being as an individual with the other animals, or even other parts of environment or components of environment, the kind of relationship it had earlier and the kind of relationship it has now, of course, is quite different. Dr. Genishas has said that he is afraid what will happen to even Northeast India. We have already started witnessing this. Dimapur is one example. Guwahati is another example. Silchar is also an example. And many, many more. Shillong is one example. We find that there is major impact of, or major indication of climate change, even in Northeast India also. To outsiders, when they hear of Northeast India, they have a very different image about it, full of jungles. When I say I am from Assam, those who do not know Lemon, they say, oh, you are from Assam, a place of jungles. But then where are jungles now? I go to my childhood places. I don't find any jungle. I remember, my memory is that tall trees are there, but now no tree. So this is happening, and this is understood in terms, if we just measure it, in the reduction of forest cover. Forest cover has decreased in Northeast India, even in last report, 2017 and 2019. 2019, if we compare, we find that throughout India, forest cover has increased, but Northeast India is giving a totally different, dismal picture. Here we find a reduction, except one state. Most of the states are reducing its forest cover. Very, very strange to know. We boasted of that we have more forest cover than the rest of India, but we are losing our forest covers. So it's not only losing the forest cover, we are losing wetlands. We are losing wetlands. I have data. I don't remember all data right now, but I can present if I am getting some. I think I should present some of these. I believe it is visible.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay. Just I had kept some data for ready reference. See, if we look at the data of state of forest report, this is Arunachal Pradesh has lost 276. 276, it must be 276 square kilometers must be the unit. Then it's only Assam which has increased forest cover. Manipur 499 square kilometer. Meghalaya 27, Mizoram 180, Nagaland 3, like that. So what does it show? That we are losing forest cover. Northeast India, which is known for its pristine beauty, greenery, now is losing its forest cover. The place with its states, you know the name of the state, Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya. These states, the name nomenclature itself shows that how it's different from other parts of the country. It's very in the lap of nature. Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, you can see how close it is to nature, and not only just, you know, it's a latitude and longitude dimension, but also if we look at the mainly the vegetation and all, and mainly the biodiversity. I believe most of us, those who are not college students, others do have a very clear idea about the biodiversity of the region. It is one of the biodiversity hotspots of the world. I do have again a picture of sorry. So this is a picture, I think it's visible. This is a picture which depicts the biodiversity hotspot of the world. So Northeast India is falling in one of the two biodiversity hotspots of the country of India, one being the Western Ghat and the other being the Himalayas, or you can say Eastern Himalayas. This red color, this is India, and then this is the red color, and you can see where is that biodiversity hotspot. So Northeast India falls under these biodiversity hotspots. And to again understand what is biodiversity hotspot, we understand that yes, it should have different type of varieties. There are some indicators to define one particular area as biodiversity hotspots. So it is one of the we can say 17 biodiversity hotspots, or we can say out of 36 biodiversity hotspots of the world, or we can say out of 13 biodiversity hotspots of the world. Actually, there are different agencies and different scientists, they have defined or identified biodiversity hotspot. So whatever it is, Northeast India is one of the very falls under one of the very important biodiversity hotspots of the world. I'm not going to discuss in detail. The botany students can understand the flora, the diverse flora we have in the region, the different varieties of flora and fauna. Northeast boasts of many type of animals. You know, this one-horned rhino is one, then Huluk gibbon, then some of the primate species very much found in Northeast India, which are not found in others. So Northeast India is house or home to a number of biodiversity, biological varieties or biodiversities. So this biodiversity again is a matter of concern, because I have taken Northeast India because we know that these biodiversities are also losing. As according to certain estimates, I have the source here. If anybody is interested, can see the source. It shows that this Himalayas, Eastern Himalayas, has lost 75% of its area. This loss, 75% of the total area under the biodiversity hotspots. Not only, of course, it is a picture of the entire world. Other biodiversity hotspots are also in danger. There are 10 biodiversity hotspots which are under threat. And Northeast India, which is falling in Eastern Himalayas, is also one of them. Anyway, I'm not going to discuss all these in detail, because the students of botany can understand the varieties and they can understand the importance. And what I want to say here is that we being the social scientists, it is very alarming that we are losing biodiversities, we are losing forest areas in terms of area, we are losing wetlands in terms of area, in terms of quality. So in terms of quality and quantity, we are losing only. So this is the dimension of environment. But then what about the people over here? We know the region boasts of a number of ethnic communities It is known as cultural mosaic. Number of ethnic communities around, as they say, that there are around 200. I met someone was telling 200 communities of Naga itself. Anyway, I'm not going to 200, even 24 categories or types of tribes of among the Nagas, Boros. So being the students of Northeast India, I don't need to say about that dimension, that how many communities are there and the differences among these communities in terms of origin, history of migration, language, beliefs and practices, livelihood, ways of livelihood. There is always a difference. So we celebrate difference in Northeast India in terms of cultural diversity, and also we celebrate a difference in terms of biodiversity. So we can understand how important Northeast India is if we talk about sustainable development. How these two aspects, in one side we find the environment, which is composing of a number of biotic and abiotic components, and another side we find society, which in Northeast India is having only diversities. Now, what happened? We know that there is a very symbiotic relationship between, any human beings, society and environment in Northeast India. As we are from Northeast India, most of us are from Northeast India, we have very clear idea, the symbiosis of man and nature, human and nature, human being and nature in Northeast India. How strong bond remains between society, social being and natural being. You go to the hills, you go to the wetlands, you go to the river banks. Everywhere you find there is a direct link, relation. There was, I'll not say always is, I'll rather say there was a direct, was, in some cases there was, and in many cases there still is a direct bondage between nature and human being. And this is reflected in many studies. A. D'Souza, Nagaland, he was working in Nagaland. Then B.K. Rai Burman. There are many, P.S. Ramakrishnan, environmentalist. They have spoken on the symbiotic relationship. And I think we don't need any expert to understand how, the community over here are living a very close proximity with nature. We call them, a term is there, ecosystem people. They are the ecosystem people. They are the people who live in a very in harmony with nature. But then what has happened now is a different picture. Every now and then we find that harmony has turned into a disharmony. And there is a disruption in the bond between man and nature. I'm not saying anything new. This is known to us that environmental degradation has taken place in Northeast India, and the entire world it is taking place, and Northeast India is also not away from it. Some of us may have a very wrong impression that Northeast India is pristine, but it is not always. So the alarming changes that is taking place is a matter of concern to social scientists, natural scientists, environmentalists, policy makers, and the executors of those policies. In a word, we will say the equation of man and nature has got changed now. Now, being a student of sociology, what we study, what needs to be studied? As I said in the beginning, that my lecture is not so much of philosophizing, rather simply it is more of sensitizing the students, and of course also sensitizing the researchers, more of a type of advocacy. I have taken the advantage. I got the privilege to take the scope that really we need to sensitize ourselves. We need to look at our surroundings, what is happening, and we should have a valued research. We should also have some value orientation when we go for our research, when we go for writing something. What's happening around us? So we don't need much books or research reports to understand the degradation. In our everyday life, when we are interacting with others, we get this picture, we know that it's degrading. If you just cross near anywhere, any corner of Northeast you are, I know you are having, all of us are having similar kind of experience. There is developmental activities. Of course, we should have development. Of course, we need to have a better life. So we find every now and then the road is, there is a big road coming up. There are big bypasses. The flattening of hillocks, very common phenomenon every time you find near the cities. Encroaching wetlands in urban areas, encroaching wetlands. We are encroaching wetlands. And everything is related to our behavior. In one side, I'm not going to the geographical or environmental explanation to those degradations. There are even I am aware of the fact that out of the total climate change that is happening is 30% are for the 30% of the degradation is for which the human being or man is responsible. Action of man-made causes are 30%. 70% are not man-made. But even that, out of the 30%, we can see it is increasing. It is increasing. Maybe it may go beyond. So what is that happening? That development. We need development, as I said earlier also. We need development. But then the pace of development is too fast. And moreover, what we find is that a development without any proper vision. I will say vision means, okay, we talk about sustainable development, but then a proper sustained vision is not there. And that is happening, and that is reflected in many of the actions. So when we, now next question comes, how to address this? What is the, how to address the threats that has come up? There are many threats. Many of you can just see nowadays there is no dearth of information. You can see those threats in terms of data. As I said, you just see the data of degradation. Talk about pollution. Talk about forest cover. Talk about wetland loss. Talk about urban air pollution and others. There are no dearth of data, but again, we are also having a number of policies and programs which are oriented to have development. Now, where should we draw the line? What should be done is very important. So, as I said that my job is to sensitize, I want that every individual should be aware of what is happening around, and even if we are researchers, we should take up our research to a level where we all can contribute to save this planet Earth. Now, coming at the job of sociologists, now how to address this problem if we just theorize it? There are approaches. One approach says that we can do it is a statist approach. The state plays a very important role, as very often we blame government. Government should do this and that. So this is one that government can do. Government can stop people in deforestation, deforestating. Government can stop people. Government can reduce pollution by certain environmental laws. There are enactment. We know there are many environmental laws, and also implementation of different policies, programs are being taken up by government. So that's what is statist approach. State plays an important role. Next comes the community approach. Community plays very important role. So here, when we talk about community in modern society, we can say it's civil society plays very important role. People play very important role, and even small communities at rural areas also can play important role. Means a conscious community which should take certain steps to protect the environment. And then the other one is the individual level. Our doctor's principle is there, that individual can also play certain role. So now, which one should be taken? Should we go for individualistic approach, or should we go for communitarian approach, or we should go for statist approach? That is a question we can propose for anyone. But then, if we see the actions of government departments, all of us are aware that how these actions are taking place. There are some recently there are some positive reports to many changes, but then it's not to our expectation. As I said, that there is a change in forest cover. Now, how to stop wetland degradation? In your city, you just see near your urban areas how many wetlands are there, and how these are getting degraded, how these are encroached. You will not find 1/4 of the wetland, urban wetlands. You will not find 1/4 of that also exists. That's what is happening. Now, we do not understand what is the importance of wetlands. So one problem is that the knowledge about environment is very much lacking. That's why I say that I need to talk about environment. I want to sensitize, and I want that, everybody should understand, even a student of botany should understand the role society has, and how there is a necessity of linking disciplines, an interdisciplinary approach, an interdepartmental approach, not only interdisciplinary but also interdepartmental. So what we talk about, there are criticisms, and they say that even if government is taking a lot of actions, policies, plans, schemes are taken up, there are enactment of laws, but then why finally we don't find people are following those things, and then how these are not being implemented in total. So there is a problem of lack of integration or integrated approach. We need an integrated approach. This is what is my stand for this. And another thing, as I said, that initially when there was a link between nature, or bond between human being and nature was very strong in a traditional society, but somehow because of modernization, because of British colonization, we find that that bond has got disrupted. As I talk about these new developmental activities, you find dams, you find roads, you find big buildings, big cities, whatnot. Lot of industries are coming up day by day. So these are there. So these are the developmental activities, and these have come up. It's we can say this is a different lifestyle that has been that has got diffused to India, to have a model of life that you should have. This is the only model to live a better life, happy life. So this is one, and we see this kind of model has this colonial impact on Northeast India also equally. There are number of books which shows that how systematically forest cover, jungle has been turned into forest areas. So these jungles got turned into forest areas, and these forests are of commercial values, not of value for biodiversity or nature. Rather, it is more market oriented. So these all have taken place because of the British invasion, and slowly the new government, Indian government, independent government, has also taken up, has followed the path of modernization. Fine. But then what we find is that modernization we do not understand properly, and we are just dividing or just breaking the bond between the man and nature. Development is not possible if there is no proper bond between man and nature, and that bond has to be kept intact. Otherwise, development cannot sustain. Now, in traditional society, we had a traditional way of keeping the bond, and in modern society, we can have a way of keeping the bond in a new way. We find new ways, new engagements of social being in protecting environment. We can explore those and we can act accordingly. Social being, society, social being, and the stakeholders should work together and find out alternative ways. As I said, modern society, we talk about technology. Technology is important. Industrialization is important. But then what kind of industrialization? What kind of technology should be used? So there is a need to understand the right way of addressing the problems, find out a sustained way of life, having a vision, I'll say environmental vision, or a kind of environmental democracy, keeping the right of communities intact without harming or affecting their right or intruding into their right, as some of the Marxists or some of the philosophers like Habermas said that, for college students may not understand, Habermas said that it is a penetration of state into the sphere of individual. Okay, so state is penetrating into our own, or the life of community, life world of community, that is taking place. So to what extent state should penetrate and intervene in the life world of community, we need to understand that. And for that, an integrated approach is very much necessary. It should not be one-way traffic. And then only we can have a better Northeast. I will stop here. I expect our students do take up these values, and in future when they go for they become a policymaker or a researcher, they can keep those things in mind, and then can think of a better Northeast India, and we shouldn't be much worried in future about Dimapur or Silchar or Guwahati. We can even alter the status of our cities and rural areas. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sita. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. I hope everyone, along with me, we are so much enlightened with your talk on today's topic, that was on the environment in correlation with the society. So that was basically man in relation with the nature. So thank you so much, ma'am, once again. Now it's time for the question and answer session. So if anyone have any question, you may please unmute yourself and ask directly, or you can drop your question in the comment section.
Well, ma'am, I'm Uttam Nath from the Department of Botany. So I have a slight inquiry on the ecotourism. Ma'am, we know Northeast India, it could be a discrete hub of ecotourism, since we are having enough bioresources. So if we choose to study an area of tourist interest for bringing it under the concept of ecotourism, so what are the parameters that we have to select for?
So, Dr. Sita, should we take all the questions together, or we'll address one by one?
I think it will be better if we can address one by one. I think there will be only few questions. I hope so.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think it will be better if we just carry one by one. Yeah.
Okay, the question is on ecotourism, and what can be the parameters to develop the sector? This is, if I understood the question rightly.
Yes.
Anyway, first of all, we should understand, my point is that we can think of alternative path of development, and we have ready examples. We have seen Sikkim has done well by focusing on ecotourism and tourism industry mainly. So Northeast can, of course, take this advantage of going into ecotourism. It's discussed very often. It has been discussed in many platforms that the Northeast India has a scope in that line also. We know that Northeast India is, earlier when British came, British was not interested in Northeast India directly, but British was interested because Northeast is a gateway to the Eastern world. So they wanted to grab this area first and then march forward. This is one. So Northeast India has a strategic importance, being in the having a number of international borders. A state is having 3-4 borders, even like Assam is having international borders. So we still have not explored the scope of tourism, like how to lead a happy life. First of all, we need to understand, we should understand what is happiness. We should define what is happiness, and then what is happy life, and then how people enjoy, how people remain happy. So happiness can be done by consumption of material resources. Northeast India has a vast reserve of minerals, natural resources. Later on, British started exploiting those things slowly, animals, then minerals. The British has exploited. So, but then there are alternatives, as I said, as Dr. Uttam has also pointed out, that we can go for ecotourism. And also, we can take lessons from different countries, how they are developing ecotourism. What are the other scopes, I'll say. I am not saying that what are the parameters of development of ecotourism. I'll say other scopes of ecotourism. How to develop ecotourism. Certain steps have to be taken. We know those. That we have to keep it free from those, what we say, terrorism, extremism, and insurgency, because people are not interested to come to this part. Are still very much scared of coming to Northeast India. One is the extremism, another is the geographical isolation. It's not connected. So of course, connection is a source of many problems. Many problems. Interconnectivity may lead to other kinds of problems, but then if these are addressed properly, we can still think of. We have many examples of many countries which are doing very well in human development, like Norway, Sweden. Position is very high in human development. Sometimes first, third, fourth, like that. So if you see how they are trying to keep their environment green. So we can not necessarily, we have to go forward. We have to take up the path of exploiting natural resources in this way, by just completing or consuming, or rather by keeping these intact. We can also find alternatives, and ecotourism is one, and we can do it. There are many ways how to do it. We can also create artificial resources to attract tourists. Not necessarily we have to depend on the natural resources. We have enough. We can at least attract the tourists from nearby areas and some of the East Asian countries, we can attract Myanmar, Thailand, then even Nepal or Bangladesh. We can take advantage, comparative advantage of that also. So there are a lot of avenues, and we should always, I mean, what I want to say is that I just want to sensitize again all the researchers and the future administrator or policy makers that there is a need to think in other way also. Not necessarily every time we have to think of development in terms of exploiting nature. By keeping nature intact also, we can have development. But of course, we know that certain growth is very much necessary, but then with equity. And that equity is not simply in terms of social being, but also in terms of biological being, environment. That's all. Thank you. I don't know, could I satisfy you or not, but this is what I understand. How can we go for? Keeping some of the examples from developed countries, like, as I said, Scandinavian countries and all. Thank you. Yes, Sita.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, is there any more questions from the participants? I hope there is none. Then we will keep this question and answer session now. Now I'd like to give this time to Mr. Uttam Nath, Assistant Professor and HOD of Department of Botany, St. John College, for the vote of thanks.
So, Nijam, are we winding so soon? I think we should wait for 1-2 questions, right?
No one is coming forward, ma'am.
Okay, if no one, ma'am, can I just ask one question? It's not a question. I just wanted to know something more. That actually, can we just say that environmental problems are simultaneously affecting the social problems from the point of sociological background? Can we just say, and because of the resource depletions and all, can we just say? I just wanted to know, ma'am. It's not a question.
See, environmental problems are affecting society. And that way, environmental problems are social problems, I'll say. Environmental problems are not only environmental problems. These are the social problems. And as social being, as social scientist, we have a role to play. And what is that? As we understand, sociology is a discipline which tries to understand or which studies the interrelationship between different institutions. So, society is a combination of a number of institutions and organizations. I will say a network again, network of institutions and organizations. So, and these institutions and organizations are always related to, or these have emerged out of some human needs, or I will say human needs, not social needs, I will say human needs. What are those human needs? To have a better life, to have better food, to have a better, better stay. So, whatever is affecting us is ultimately a social problem. So any problem in environment, obviously there will be a problem for society, because it is going to affect social life, human being, and then human being is going to have, like you have recently seen the biological problem of this health issue, this recent lockdown, how this virus has threatened people's life, society, social life, how society was not visible, and still we are interacting because internet is there. Otherwise you are an animal, like you will be in the jungles, like you only family is there where you are interacting. Otherwise you are not able to interact with anybody else outside. And if continues, nobody will survive. And then where is society? So that way, environmental problems are not away from society. We will understand, and that's why we have a sociology of environment. So how we are dealing with environment, how environment is influencing human being or human behavior, and how human behavior is influencing environment or affecting environment. So there is an interrelationship always. And then if there is an interrelationship, then we should also address the problems with that interrelationship, keeping that interrelationship in mind. And we should also take care equally of environment as we take care of our family. This is my submission.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, I think one question, Nijam, can you just take the question? From Jonal Abdi, I think, yeah. Nijam, please take the question.
Ma'am, can you please ask that? Because I can't see it over here.
Okay. Sir Jonal, I'm requesting to place your question. Sir, please on your mic.
Switch on your mic.
Sir, can you just switch on your mic? We can't hear anything.
Yeah. Is it audible?
Yes. Now you are audible.
Yeah. In urban area, especially in Silchar, when we see about the housing pattern in the urban area, there is lack of space from one house to another house. And for this, we will get so much pollution. Even if you think about the, temperature, definitely it is difference in between Silchar and rural areas like Dargakuna in other places. Okay. So as Professor Jimli mentioned that we need quality of life. We need quality of life in modern era so that our environment and our society will make balance and will live quality of life. Now my question is that, or inquiry is that, how we will minimize about this housing pattern in the Silchar urban area so that we will better live in quality of life in terms of education, in terms of health, etc., etc. Please, ma'am, can you have some opinion regarding this matter? Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Sita, I'll address this one. So regarding environmental, housing patterns, there are regulations in different urban areas, municipal corporation, then development authorities there. There should be proper, there are laws. These laws are actually violated. There are laws, these laws are violated. Silchar still it is developing. It's not, has not gone to that level of development like other metro cities. It's not even a corporation. So still these are less, problems are still less. But then, as I said, that we should always have a vision. That's why I said that I'll be taking a, once again, I'll repeat the point that I want to address this issue every time, that future we have to always keep in mind, and that sustainable development, SDG, sustainable development goals we have, United Nations has taken up. Those goals have to be fulfilled, and for that we need to have a long, big roadmap. We should have a proper roadmap. We should start acting now onwards. So there is a necessity of intervention from individual, from community. As I said, if there is any problem, it should be reported, And we should be aware of the laws. That is also equally important. We do not know many things, we are not bothered. We should be aware of different rules, different regulations, different laws available, and then also we should act accordingly. So our part is not neglected. Individual's role is also important. Community role is also important. At least every part of the system should work. So that way it will be reduced. We can have a better even if there are problems with the regulations. Municipal corporation should time to time, this takes place time to time, but there is not actually problem with the regulations, but more of its utilization, implementation, and people's action. Many cases, you know about Delhi, big cities, how there are violations. And also government is also taking step many times. Recently, you have heard, today there was news, these days there is news of land mafias. Land mafia plays very strong role in those things. They create problems. They don't maintain certain things. They do not follow certain rules. And there is an excess in other side. So there are different dimensions. This is not the right, I will not say the proper, I am not getting proper scope, I'll say time to discuss. There are a lot of things. We need to deliberate on these, and there are deliberations. We are deliberating, but what is very important is that the action is not taken place always. So if we are very much careful about our, we should have a value-loaded research, I will say. Value-loaded research. The research should have certain goals. And that's why I say that my job is more of advocacy than of doing philosophy and others. Okay? Jainal, I think I could say something.
Yeah,
say something.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. But I would like to add one more thing, ma'am.
Okay.
Quality education is very, very important, ma'am. We should not forget about the quality education. If someone takes only education, it is not indicates that, okay, your life will be in quality of life. No. Quality education is very important, so that we'll think about our sustainable development for our near future. Thank you, ma'am, so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sir Joinal, for your nice questions. Now I give time to Nijam. Miss Nijam, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah.
you can carry on now.
Okay, ma'am. Now I'd like to give this time to Sir Uttam for the vote of thanks. Sir, you may please take your time now.
Thank you, Nizam. Once again, good afternoon to one and all present here. Honorable resource person, Dr. Jimli Bhattacharjee, respected principal, Professor S.T. Janetius, St. John College, and Mr. Peter Bank, administrative head of the St. John College, and all the participants. It is such an honor to me to get the opportunity to thank you all present here in this webinar. On behalf of the Department of Sociology and Botany of St. John College, Dimapur, I'd like to express my gratitude to our esteemed resource person for giving her valuable time and presentation to make this webinar a great success. Thank you so much, ma'am, for enhancing our sanity and giving us a pragmatic prelude on the topic. So we are deeply indebted to you, and would like to have your shelter more in the coming days. I extend my gratitude to our principal, Professor S.T. Janetius, for his prescient keynote of the webinar and guiding us in every step of the program to make it successful. We are very much thankful to the management of our beloved college for being with us, as always, with kind cooperation to make this webinar possible. A big thank you to our management. And we are also thankful to the convener of this webinar, Dr. Sita Malaka, for organizing this event so promptly in a short duration of time. Her dedication and contribution towards this program is highly appreciated. And I'd also like to thank Ms. Nijam Bashamatari for elegantly and articulately hosting this webinar. Thank you, Nijam. With deep reverence, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all my fellow colleagues of both the Department of Sociology and Botany for their kind support to conduct this program smoothly. Thank you so much, everyone. And last but not least, I'd convey my sincere thanks to all the participants across Northeast. It was indeed a great interaction. Thank you so much once again. We enjoyed the day, and especially our students, I think they will take back a lot on these topics. Thank you so much, everyone. And now I'll go back to Ms. Nijam. Thank you, Nijam.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now we have come to the end. So with this, we will wind up today's webinar. Thank you all for your participation.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you so much on behalf of Sociology Department and Botany. And we hope all of you will join us if we are having any program next time. I hope all of you will cooperate and support us in the same way. And thank you so much, ma'am. Actually, you accepted the invitation in a short period of time. I was so happy, and thank you so much once again, ma'am.
Thank you to all. Thank you to Sita. Thank you all. Let's keep it up in future also. This kind of spirit. Let's carry on.
Thank you.